welcome back. So let's do some more HTML prep. So we got a pretty little toolbar up there. Our little more vert is hidden because we've left that in an off state. We've got a nice little padding from the edge here just because we did some things to kind of set up our router outlet. Let's go ahead and make this page now. So our goal is to make it look like this. And actually, like, this is pretty much a static page. So in making the HTML, you're basically kind of done with this page. And then it'll just be the action of logging in that we won't do this time. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this guy. And so what we want to do is we want to open up our sign-in component HTML, and we want to start making it a card. So cards, if you recall, have a couple of different pieces. So we come over here to our cards area. So the basic attributes is just MD card. It's that much as simple. And then it's got an MD card title, and it's got MD card content, and then a few other things. But we're just going to do a title and content. So let's go ahead and start with that basic structure. So MD card, and then I'm going to close the MD card, and it's going to have an MD card title, and I'm going to close the MD card title, and it's going to have an MD card content. And then I'm going to close the MD card content. So that's kind of our basic structure of this guy. Inside the title area, I'm going to put an H2 that just says welcome. And inside the content, I've actually got some text that you can copy. It's in the doc. So if you go to the password keeper doc, inside the implementation, there's just kind of some text that you could copy just to kind of make it easier for you here. Suppose I could just put it above the video for you as well. And so it's just a couple paragraph tags and a very basic button that says to do, add a button. And we can just go ahead and kind of see what we've got going on here. So it's taken shape. It looks like a card, which is good. It's got a welcome up here. There's all kinds of extra padding, which is weird. My button just looks terrible. So there's still plenty to fix and whatnot. So the first thing I want to do is I want to use my little trick. So my little trick was to add a style background and just like see these different things. So for example, let's make the whole card be red. So there I added a 255.00 to that one to make it red. Let's make this next guy, so style background. Let's make him, I don't know, you can make him any color you want. So in my notes I wrote 55, 55, 255, so it's a blue color. And then this last one will make him 255, 0, 255, 255, so he's kind of like a cyan color. And what this is going to let me do is it's going to let me see where is the card, where is the card title, and where is the card content. And that's just going to help me figure out kind of what's going on here. So you can see that there's this great big card, and then there's the title, and then there's the content. And you can also use your inspector to help figure out what's going on. So here I'm on my card, and you can see that a card by default has a big padding on the top, and then on all the sides. So that's kind of where part of the red is coming from. And then the card title, you can see has a margin on the bottom, which is what's causing a little bit of the difference there. And then there's the card content, which actually is not, no padding, no margins on it. So you can kind of see what's causing the different areas of red here. So now what I want to do is I want to start playing with my CSS to change some of these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of work out my screen to where I can, open up the sign-in component CSS. And I can kind of see, my page at the same time, which is kind of fun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type some CSS, then I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to see what impact that has. So what I'm going to do here in my Sassy CSS is I'm going to say that I've got an MD card. And one thing you can do with Sassy CSS is you can nest things, which is kind of cool. So I can say that, inside my MD card, I've got an MD card title. And so I can put rules on the card up here. So I can say like padding of 0 on the card. Oh, and then I can save it, and then when I save it, you can see that it'll just refresh over here. So a padding of 0 made a tremendous difference just right there. And then what I can do on my card is I can say that there's no padding on the title of it and no margin on the title of it. And so if I save that, I can watch it reload. It looks like that had actually no impact, because really what I want to do more is I want to modify the H2. So the H2 that's inside of the card title actually had the big margin. So as soon as I save this rule, then hopefully you should see an impact over here. Cool. And so what I want to do is I just want to play with these different sizings until I kind of get things to like really look the way that I want them to look. So the next thing I want to do is I kind of got rid of the paddings and margins that I didn't want, and then I'm going to put them back on in very specific ways. So the card title, I actually do want some padding on him. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use 15 px on the top and then 30 px on the sides. And so if I do that 30 px on the sides, that'll be about what I want him to look like. Now, interestingly enough, the card content, which I'll put down here, so I'm going to put on card content, I also want him to have very similar padding rules. His height can be different, but I really, I want that same 30 on the sides. I'll tell you what, I'll just make him 30 all the way around, and I'll save it, and I'll see kind of what that looks like. And so now you can kind of see that the padding, if it's the same on both, it kind of lines up and it looks good. Now the thing I don't like about this is I've written the number 30 here, and I've written the number 30 here, and if I change one, I'm just going to have to remember to change the other. And Sassy CSS can actually do a little bit better than that. So what you can do is you can actually add variables. So if you wanted to, you could just say horizontal padding is 30 px. Variables you typically you're supposed to begin with a dollar sign. Is how you're supposed to do that. And then you can just use that variable here and here. And there's no visible change, right? So it didn't change, but now I've got the number 30 in only one spot. So if I wanted to change it to 20, you can see that they would change together. I'm going to leave it at 30 though, but you can see that they change together. And that ability to do variables is actually one of the main reasons that I like Sassy CSS. Also, I do kind of like the nesting that you can do, just because then your CSS kind of follows the same patterns as your HTML, and I just kind of like how that looks. Let's see what else we want to do on this guy. So the card title, I'm going to do a little bit more with him. So let's just go ahead and set his background color to a specific color. So I'm going to set it to, I just figured out that I thought this looked pretty, 0898889. I just kind of like that shade. And now that I'm doing things with color, I kind of want rid of my helper style rules, right? So they serve their purpose already, and now they're done. They helped me kind of figure out what was going on with paddings and margins and things. But now I'm done with them. So now it'll look more like what I expect it to look like, which is cool. The next thing I want to do is I want to make welcome show up in a different text color. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it show up in white. So I think that looks better. And then to be honest, personally, I don't really like the bolding. So I'm going to set the font weight to normal and save that up and just see what it looks like as a normal weight. So I like that better. The card content, it's looking pretty good. I always kind of like it when things kind of look a little washed out a little better. So let me put on an RGBA of black, but with less opacity. So I'm going to do an auto format there to get my spaces between them. So now my content, instead of being black, it's just kind of be a little bit washed out, and I just kind of like that gray look a little bit better. And since there's really not much happening on this page, you could increase the font size as well. This is an optional. So you could make it kind of like a jumbo font. So here I've changed it to kind of a big jumbo font. Because I mean, most people's pages are bigger, and if you're on mobile, I guess we could make it small for mobile and big for desktop. I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to call it a font size of 18. The next thing I really want to do is I want to focus on that button, right? So that button kind of looks disastrous. It says to do, add a button. And so what I want to do on this button is I want to kind of make it all Angular material. So if you remember your buttons, there's different rules that you can put on for buttons. You can do different types of buttons. This one, what I'm going to do is a raised button. So I'm going to say button, raised button. And you can see that just that one class is going to significantly change things, right? So now it looks like a much cooler button, which is great. Next, I want to, well, I'll fix the text on it next. So instead of to do, add a button, I'll make it say Rose Holman login. So there, I just kind of changed the text on it really quick. I also want it to be centered, like on the page. There's a couple of different ways to do centering, but what I like to do is I like to learn more about Angular Flex layout, and I like to see if I can use it to get the job done. Maybe I can, maybe I can't, but that's the way I kind of want to start things. So the way that this page is set up is it's kind of set up to where there's like a paragraph, a button, and a paragraph. So it's actually arranged in a column. And then I really want each thing to be centered in that column. And so if I were to go over to my little docs on Angular Flex layout, I can see some of the rules I can put on here. So the way this works is that there are parent containers and then for like child containers. So parent containers typically have rules like layout that say if something is a row or a column. And then they've also got layout align to say whether things are centered, start or end, or things like that. By the way, the best way to like learn about what these mean is there's a couple demos online. So I went ahead and clicked on demo online. And this very first one here I think is really helpful. So you can see what happens if something is in a column. They're arranged like that. So I want a column for this or a row. What happens if things are pushed to the start? What happens if things are pushed to the end? What happens if there's no rules set? And you can see with the perpendicular direction what happens if there's the start or the end or centered. And you can see that there are sometimes times where like end doesn't really do what you think, but there are reasons for it whenever it does it. So those are the types of rules I want to learn about. So in this particular case, I want to put on a layout rule, so an FX layout, to say that this thing is a column. And so now it should be, arranged as a column. And then I also want to put on a layout alignment rule to say what this thing should be. So you always give it two values. You say what is the main axis, and then what is the cross axis. And what I'm going to do is I want the cross axis to be centered. So that's what I want for the cross axis. And then for the main axis, it really doesn't matter what it is because it's gonna smoosh to its bounds. So one thing you can do is you can actually say none, and sometimes I say none whenever I know it doesn't matter, and then that way it's kind of like documentation for it's like, hey, this thing doesn't matter, so I said none, which will make it not have anything, and you can see that successfully centered my button. So that felt like a lot of work for centering. But it's more that I try to do things with Angular Flex layout whenever I can. And it forced us to learn a little bit about Angular Flex layout just to get the centering of that button. And it was fine. Next thing I want to do is I want this button to be red. So I'm going to go over to my CSS and I'm going to make it red. So this is a button that's in my card content. I also like Sassy CSS because I don't really have to specify this button much more than it is already, because already we're looking for something that's in a card, that's in the card content, that's a button. And so actually it's already like really well defined what button I'm talking about. Some things that I might want to do to this button. So first I want to move it up on my screen some so you can see it better. And I like to set its background color to the Rolls-Holman red. Rolls-Holman red is the number 8 followed by 5 zeros. So if you save that off, you can immediately see the impact of the background color change. The background color change made it obvious that we needed a different foreground color. So that's just color. We'll just make it white. If you want it to be a little bit bigger, you can change the font size. So the rest of the text down there is 18 points, so we can make it 18 points as well. So it got a little bit bigger. You could choose to give it a margin, especially for the top and the bottom. There's a chance that that's going to mess up your centering, though. And it looked like it did fine. But I was kind of worried that margin might mess up my centering, but it looks like it gave it a little bit more space around it. And a lot of these things are optional, right? And then the padding, will make the top and bottom be 5, and then the left and the right be 20. This is kind of meant to be more of like an advanced web course. So the goal is that you kind of understand what's going on with the CSS here. So if you specify one rule, it sets it for all 4, top, bottom, left, right. If you specify 2, it sets it for top as the first one, and bottom also gets it as well. And then the sides get the 20. And the way, if you ever wanted to, you could set it, you could set all 4 values, but you can always set fewer of them to make things work. So here I set top to 5, I set right to 20, and then I set it to 1 on the bottom and 1 on the side. But if I wanted to set just tops and sides, I could do 2. And I assume that a lot of those things you're comfortable with. Cool, so I think it's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add a click listener for it though. So when you click this button, what function would you like to call? And I'm just going to call a function. I'll just do sign in with Rosefire. So Rosefire is the name of the tool that we're doing to use Rolls Home authentication. So I'm just going to go ahead and in my internal words say sign in with Rosefire. Come over to the TypeScript here, say that I've got a function which returns nothing, and it's not going to be a very exciting function. It's just going to be a console log that says to do sign in with Rosefire. Cool. And so I think that we've got the core of the HTML together. So we've got a decent looking page here. Obviously, we could do some things different. I think maybe the margin around here looks a little bit big. But when you click it, you can see that it says sign in with Rosefire. All right, so I think we got the sign in page done. Pretty happy with that. If you go over to the main page, it does not look as exciting as the sign in page. But these HTML and CSS things, they're just necessary evils so that you can have a really good looking web app, right? Go look at our changes. So we have the HTML changes. We've got the Sassy CSS changes. Make sure it's got an auto format here. I noticed some of them were off down there. And then we've got our TypeScript pretty trivial changes. So I'm going to call this preparing. Oops, somebody didn't get saved. Save. So preparing the HTML for the sign-in page. Cool. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'll go ahead and check that in. I'll go ahead and ship it up to the cloud by clicking down here. Sometimes I forget to ship it up to the cloud for long periods of time. So this one looks pretty good. I think that there's a lot of things we could work on next. I think the thing I would be most interested in working on next, though, is actually doing real Rosefire sign-in. So come back next time and we'll kind of hit the heart of this app, which is the Rosefire sign-in. All right, see you then. Bye.